Okay, so yeah, good evening everyone, and yeah, warm welcome to tonight's Agile Northants event. This is our 108th event since we started running in 2016, and so we're now over 2,800 members. So yeah, nice to see some familiar faces, and warm welcome to anyone here for the first time. So yeah, our speaker is Kenny Wood, who brings extensive experience in technology and AI, who focuses on empowering communities and SMEs by bridging the digital divide through practical AI training and digital skills development. Uh, in this session, Kenny will guide us through AI's development stages, likening its evolution to growing from a baby into a teenager. He'll highlight key milestones in AI's progress, discuss current challenges, and even explore responsibilities that come with its increasing maturity. So, yeah. And so some opening announcements as well before we dive in. We are officially, Agile Northants is officially partnered with Scrum Alliance as an official Scrum user group. So that means for every 1 hour you spend with us at Agile Northants, you earn one Scrum Education Unit point, SEU, towards your Scrum Alliance certifications. So for today's event, you will earn one SEU point. We'll provide more information to how to collect your SEU points at the end of the session. Okay. And also, we're looking for some speakers for 2025, specifically October and December. So if you are interested in providing some interesting and timely topics, workshops or anything, that kind of thing related to Agile or any other topic, we encourage you to step forward. Events normally online last around 90 to 120 minutes, so both local and international speakers are welcome. I think it's a good opportunity, a fantastic opportunity, just to share your challenges you've had, any learnings, insights, and any way to how to connect and collaborate with other like-minded individuals. Agile Northants is a good place to do that. So, okay, after that few slides, just if there's any microphones on, if you can mute them, please, for the presentation, and then I'm just going to welcome now Kenny Wood. So, yep, Kenny, please take over.
I turn my mic off, that'd be schoolboy error, and it start
Yeah,
talking.
don't turn your mic off. No.
Yeah, no. So thanks to everybody, and thanks to Mohammed reaching out and obviously having the opportunity. This will be a bit of a different session. And I see Andrew's joined on the call. You're going to find a bit more about me and myself, Mine Bicycle, and Simon. There's two of us at the moment pedaling, as I like to call it. But we've come in across AI very differently. We don't get very technical about tokens and that because I'm very consumer led. So one of the things that I found at the moment is the end users, us. AI is going so fast. I think we're struggling to sort of understand it. And just to paint a bit of context, this is actually quite a new thing. So I don't know if you know yourself, but I really like Geoffrey Hinton. And about 2-3 weeks ago, he looked at AI and he basically said, you know what, it's like a baby. So basically, I watched 2 or 3 things, and then this is quite early. I've been building it out. So this is quite a lot of work what he's done with his Nobel Peace Prize, because he looks at AI and he essentially created the framework, which is ChatGPT, OpenAI, LLMs. So I've sort of extended it. So I'll share my screen in a minute and I'll take you through it. Any questions, just let me know. I'm very take it light, but I mean, there's about 6 slides to go through, but I'll go through it slowly. A bit about myself. So I'll share the screen, and then if there's anything you want to put your hand up, stop, ask me any questions, and I'm happy to sort of dive deeper. But at the moment, the key word for me is everybody was getting caught up with AGI or artificial. When is this going to happen? And this is another thing, Geoffrey Hinton. We've got to move away from that framing and make it more relatable. I think the key thing for me would be Albert Einstein. He said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. And that's always stayed true to where I'm at, because I think that's how we should be, because it can get very confusing. I'll share my screen and then we'll get going. Is that all right? Coolio.
Absolutely.
So hopefully everybody can see the screen. I've kept it quite light. So essentially this is quite sort of an image that now I've picked in my head. So the little robot represents exactly what we're building. So obviously where we're moving from. So at the moment it's sort of like baby toddler, which we'll get into. So I'm Mine Bicycle. So that's very boring. That's me. I am dyslexic. So this is one of my favorite pictures. This was actually created with AI. I actually asked AI, I like to think a lot. I told it to basically look into about me. So I've been using ChatGPT now for about 2.5 years, probably early days. And I've done a lot of work on it. So I got it to look at me and then help me create an image of what it feels like I am. So it created this amazing image for me, which I quite like. I love to think a lot. So that's me, created by AI. Mind Bicycle, just to really give you a bit of top line what we are. I want to be sort of agents of change. I don't come at it like sort of like legacy IT, I like to call it. I look at myself as a digital consultancy to help not only the end users to understand, but your staff or your employees or your business as a whole to make this more relatable, a bit more easier to understand. And as you'll see later on, I don't call it artificial intelligence, I call it collaborative intelligence. And the key for me is that for all this to work, we have to be the human in the loop. So AI is amazing, but if we haven't got oversight and we don't really know what we're doing with it, because essentially there's two AIs. There was like rule-based AI, which has always been there, sort of legacy AI. Large language models, new AI, as I like to call it, is a completely different ball game. So I like to call it collaborative intelligence. And the key for me is us. We need to be in the loop. I think AI is amazing and can be amazing, but if we haven't got that oversight, as you'll see later on, I think it can get a bit problematic. Does that all make sense? All good? Right, I'll move on. Cool. So what we're going to do now, we'll go through this slowly, but what I wanted to do is I've based this on OpenAI, because OpenAI, I think, has been the catalyst for where we've gone with AI and how quickly everybody now has jumped on the bandwagon, because OpenAI built something quite special. So as you can see, I mean, over a 5-year period, they've gone really, really quick. And the key to this is obviously, if you've been in the industry like me, I started out 20 odd years ago with dumb phones, opened the first mobile phone store in the UK. And that period probably took us to get to the iPhone, maybe 15, 16 years. But in the background, you've got to realize is we had to build the infrastructure to, the cell sites, 2G, 2.5G. We needed to put that framework in or we wouldn't have smartphones today. So we had sort of quite a lot of time really to find our feet. And I was on that journey. I was really lucky. There was a couple of people that I was with that I will mention, like Elliot Chevin now is head of Apple Europe. We was like trailblazers. So we opened this store, didn't know where it was going to go. And at the beginning, it was easy. It was box shifting because they're just dumb phones. But, this is what I'm saying. So we had about sort of 15, maybe 20 years to find our feet in telecoms and make sure we had all the stuff right up to 5G. AI is completely different, as you can see. And you'll see now I'm going to make a wild guess at the beginning, but the 15 to 20 years it's took us to get today with our smartphones and technology, we're going to now do that in 5 to 10 years with AI, which if we sit back, let's be honest, there's not a lot of time, is it, to get everything organized? So we've got about 5-10 years. So if we look at the AI journey where OpenAI started with, obviously 2019, they essentially launched GPT-2, which was, if you know where you're coming from, I won't get too techie, but 1.5 billion parameters, large language model, whatever way you want to start. So they started out in 2019. Within a very short time, they'd upgraded it to GPT-3, and they got a huge investment, obviously, off the back of Microsoft, who took a huge stake in OpenAI at the time. I believe they own 49% now. So they own quite a huge chunk of OpenAI and what goes on in the background. And that's why I just want to get this very clear, is you will find with Copilot, it can get quite confusing because Copilot, Microsoft essentially haven't really invented anything. They're just a wrapper. So their Copilot uses all the back end of OpenAI. So when you use ChatGPT Copilot, make sure you realize it essentially it's ChatGPT essentially in the background. 2021, they got even more funding. So between 2019, and 2020, they had obviously GPT 2 to 3. 2021, they just got loads more investment, Azure, infrastructure, building the servers and everything they needed to do. Then leading into 2022, they went up to 3.5. So, as you can see, in a very quick time frame, they've gone from a rudimental release, and then they went into 2023 when they released. So, essentially, from 2019, in a 5-year period, they managed to launch GPT-4. So they upgraded that much. That was a multimodal AI, which has never really happened before. And it was the fastest, when they launched between 2022 and 2023, it's still to this day now, it's the fastest downloaded app in history. They got 1 million signups in just 5 days. And I believe they've now got 500 million active users, is it per week or some crazy figure? So the reason why I think we're all here today, and you've got Gemini now, Claude, all these other startups and the AI boom, as I like to call it, I do say I credit that to OpenAI, because if you look at the law of accelerated returns, I think we can all agree in such a short time span, they went from a very rudimental thing to actually, a multimodal AI that we'd never ever had. And I think it's as big as the Industrial Revolution. And then that will lead me on to the next slide, which we get into the main key thing. So essentially during this journey, they were conceptualizing, and then it went to like where we are now. So now we gave birth, as I like to call it, which was the baby. So this is quite interesting. So I'll just quickly switch back. So basically, what Geoffrey Hinton says, and I have to get this really clear, he looks at the relationship with an AI is like a relationship between a mother and a baby. What he's concerned about is that you can't have a baby controlling a mother. Hopefully that makes sense. And that's where his analogies come from, with like a baby and a toddler. So the way he looks at it at the moment, we've sort of leapfrogged baby. We're actually already at toddler stage. So if you look at it, we've already jumped from essentially a baby to toddler. So that's where Geoffrey Hinton's saying we're currently at. So today, where we're sitting, AI is essentially a toddler. And if I don't know how many people on here have got kids. Has everybody got kids? No kids? How many have got kids? Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. And if you know what a toddler's like, they're into everything. So they're curious about everything. They need a lot of input. So they need learning, constant learning, loads of input. And actually what happened last week, I don't know if everybody's aware of, but Google have done something amazing. So what Google have actually done, they've actually built a nursery, like a playpen. And now what they've done is they've built this virtual sandbox to allow these toddlers, AI toddlers, to essentially build their own virtual worlds. So think of it like you have a business, construction, whatever way you want to do. If you want to teach this large language model to learn itself, for the first time ever, we can literally create these virtual worlds and let these AI toddlers go off and it basically learn themselves 24/7. So instead of us having to find the data and input, we've now got these toddlers in essentially a nursery, like a playpen. I don't know if everybody's aware of it, but it was SEMA and then Genie 3. Genie 3 is the interesting part. So what Genie 3 is essentially a real-time virtual world. So you can go on there and it'll actually build your world in real time and it looks real. So if you've got like robots, want to make them learn to walk or something in your business, you can now create this virtual playpen. And I think that's just off the chart, right? Who would have thought in 2025? I don't like to bring the analogy in, but it did make me think of if everybody's watched The Matrix. I was thinking, Google, I was there last week. I said, it's like Google are building The Matrix. I said, but these two things work handy. So you have the simmer, which is like the agent, and then the playpen essentially is Genie 3. And if anybody needs any more sort of, I can dive in. I won't go too deep today in that, but basically it's all trial and error and it's working 24/7. So we've literally got this toddler now. So this is where we're at. So it's off learning. Where it's going to get interesting for us is 2026 and very quick. It won't come any sooner. It will be January. But in 2026, the toddler will change into a young child. And if you see, there's some sort of age groups. So what we're going to be doing is the toddler will go from sort of crawling about the room, being curious, pulling things over. It will then grow into a young child. So then it's going to start now making its own decisions in a rudimental way, but it will start not pushing back, as Geoffrey Hinton's saying it, but it's going to become very aware of its surroundings and what it's doing. So this AI is going to be like a little young child. And again, if you have children like me, we know that stage from essentially from like a toddler going into a young child is one of the most critical periods because they start walking. And when they start walking, if you're like me, I always remember it, you're running around the kitchen trying to sort of lock all doors down and baby proof the whole house because otherwise they just start pulling things off walls, and which is what a young child does. So if we look at that analogy, think of that as your business or where we're going. And this is where we're going to have to get really clever with AI and we're going to have to sort of get ourselves up to speed. So if you are building a large language model or in this sector now, within your business, you've got to realize that within the next 5 months, roughly, you're basically, your AI will be like a young child in your business. Even if you're a single business or a massive business, you will need to treat that like a young child. And what I basically mean by it is that when you deploy it into your business and it starts to make, and it goes off to your servers, whatever it's doing, essentially, but it's going to be like a little young child, and it will get curious. And there is one thing I will add on to it, because I brought everybody up to speed, is that I think it was last week or last week, they actually did a sandbox test with this like nursery playground. So they essentially tried to shut the AI down. So they thought, right, let's see what happens if we shut this AI down. And this actually happened. I can share the report. It actually decided to clone its own model by itself and put it on a different server rack. They knew where it went, but this is where it got really strange, because it was like a young child. They put it on the naughty step, essentially. And when they asked it directly, did you do this? It actually told them no, but they could see where it was. So the model took a decision, rudimental decision, but it was thought, right, they're trying to shut me down. So essentially what it did, it cloned its model and all its stuff, and it put it on a different server rack somewhere else. So when it did, so it knew it was going to be shut down. So it preempted being shut down. So if it was closed off, it was still essentially running on a different server. Now, I don't know what you think of that, but that to me, I nearly fell off my chair. I was like, right. So now we've got AI and this was Geoffrey Hinton brought this up. So it, essentially cloned itself. I mean, what's everybody's view on that? I'll sort of stop talking for a minute. I mean, is that quite, it's quite startling, isn't it? When you look at it. But has anybody got any questions on that side of it? I know that's a bit sort of, but it's true. Thought I'd bring it in the room. Anybody got any questions on that, or will I carry on?
So I think Meta or Jan LeCun has said that his models are pretty much the same. The models that we get in the real world are constrained models that are safe for the public. But what they're seeing in the raw models are a lot more inquisitive and self-deterministic.
So, but it's a really good question, Mike. So if what you're saying there is that I won't use Grok. I don't know who uses Grok at the moment, but what Mike's actually said, if you go off and use Grok, it's a bit like what you're saying, Mike. Like he's just took the guardrails off it, and like that's just undiluted AI. And some of the things that Grok, we won't get into it, but I mean, if you look at Grok, do you use Grok yourself, Mike, or have you used it? What sort of models do you use? Do you use what one?
I try and steer clear of Elon Musk and anything he has to do with.
That's fine. What one do you use yourself? Just to ask, what's your preferred large language model? I mean, what AI do you use?
I suppose it depends on what I'm trying to achieve. So general text-based stuff, I'll use ChatGPT. If I'm doing coding, Claude.
Yeah.
If I'm wanting integration with tools at the moment, I've got quite a Google suite, so Gemini.
Yeah, so mine at the moment, and Andrew's on the call, so I found a really sweet spot at the moment, is that ChatGPT and Gemini to me are quite cool. So I have teams in the enterprise, but what I find Gemini really good for, this is a top tip, is their 2.5 Pro deep research model. So if you want to go off and do any research, like proper research, education, school, my preferred one for that at the moment, I do lean towards Gemini 2.5 Pro. It seems to give a better structure, citation, doesn't hallucinate as much, as if I'm honest. But what's interesting, what I've done with them, some of the research I'm doing, is don't be frightened of doing like a deep research with Gemini. So do that output and then actually get ChatGPT to review it and essentially use the two AIs together. And I found that works really well. But for me at the moment, I would say my workflow would be, I would lean towards ChatGPT and Gemini, but 2.5 Pro deep research at the moment to me. And then you've got Deep Think, which is coming. So I could drop back into what I was doing, but that's just where I'm at. Whatever, just a quick one, what everybody else is using, mainly ChatGPT or ChatGPT general? Cool.
Do you mind if I throw a quick question your way?
Yeah.
Just to try and understand the differentiation in your diagram between 2025 and 2026.
Correct.
2025 seems like it's quite a highly constrained, whether it's, I guess, what Dave Snowden might call sort of governing or enabling constraints. 2026, just trying to understand what you're sort of saying there. So again, Jan LeCun has been quite adamant that in the current models that we have, they don't really have a good sense of the world, so they don't have a really good world model.
Correct.
So I'm not sure whether 2026 is where you see them starting to emerge a better sense of the world and developing a more reasonable world model, or whether you're talking about agentification, just in terms of practical a practical explanation of what 2026 means.
No, that's fine. You've actually answered the question. So if you look at a young child will do exactly what you said. A young child doesn't really understand what the world is doing. So what they will do, rightly or wrongly, it's a bit like an AI. When you're putting an AI in and training, exactly what you've just said is that, ethics and red flag, you basically, with a young child or toddler, if we want to put it this way, on that screen, the 2026, you've got to realize that's hyper curious. So what it's going to do, even though you tell it not to do something, it might go off. And that's, as I said, what's just happened. So yes, you are correct. But what we're trying to say is that AI is already starting to be curious and make decisions in the background without us having any oversight. Yes, you're right. They are trying to water it down to some degree. But this is where Geoffrey Hinton's now come across. He's basically said that we now have to be hyper mindful, because he said his prediction was like 2040. So he was saying like we had another 20 years. He's now brought that forward by 10 years. This only happened over roughly about the last month. So he's been really vocal. He all of a sudden got really vocal the last month. And this is what's got me interested in what he was saying. Because what he was trying to say to us, it wasn't about AGI or whatever. He's seen like the law of accelerated returns. He's seen how quickly this machine is operating in the background and starting to get curious and do things. Even he said is making him question things, because it's starting to make decisions on its own in a rudimentary way. It's not like a human, right? But it is starting to show signs of pushback to some degree. So that's where, the young child analogy is what you've just said. That is what a young child is like. They'll go off. They might, you could have a kettle. They don't know that kettle's hot, but they'll walk over there whether they want to or not. And if you leave a cord out, they'll pull the cord down over the hot water over them. And that's what we have to. I mean, I'm trying to translate it to because I'll bring it into a business room. So when you go into a business at the moment, like C-suite and above, everybody's very much run off, and they seem to think they've got 20, 40, I don't know, maybe 50 years. That's personally what I'm seeing at the moment, which is quite sort of worrying, because we have not got the time. Yes, when you're growing up and you have that period, we have 20 years. My child's born, it takes 20 years. I have that long time to sort of understand and learn. That's going to be condensed down to 5 to 10 years. So, what I'm trying to say is if I look at my child, would I be able to bring them up? So I have 20 years when I get to 20, sorry. If someone said to me, could you do the same in 5 to 10 years? I'll be honest with you, I don't think I could. I look at it and I sort of start questioning things. I'm like, that's a short term to condense that down. Does that sort of make sense, Mike?
So I hear what you're trying to say. I guess my quandary is, if you have an AI that's told to protect itself, and as part of the constraint, then finds a way of cloning itself onto a different server, it's still
Correct.
following a constraint-based model, as opposed to really having sort of a world model that it's trying to a world model that's trying to express or trying to understand. So I guess it's so early that it's very difficult to differentiate between something that is actually having a world model and something that we almost anthropomorphize into seemingly having a world model. I'm just not sure where I stand on that just yet.
No. So just a quick one to go back to you. So the one thing I would say to you, Mike, I mean, if you've probably looked at it anyway, but if you go and look at Genie 3, what Google have built, that probably out of everything at the moment is one of not enough people are talking about it. Genie 3 is just mind blowing, right? I mean, I don't even think they know what they've built, really. If I look at it, and Genie 3 sort of blows my mind, because that's something that's basically going to accelerate what we're talking about. So where, like you said, is like the human world model, feeding it knowledge in the background, us building it. You're letting go of that development phase, because what you're essentially doing, you're creating a virtual sandbox, and the AI will work in a theory 24/7 and possibly build itself, right? So I'm just thinking, but again, this is what the analogy is with Geoffrey Hinton, is what he's saying. He's like, if we don't bring that child up correctly, that's everything. You also like ethics, the right. So as a parent, if I don't do that, my child will grow up wrong and he'll have the wrong ethics, the bias, all that comes into it. And that's what we're not doing at this stage. And I mean, look, it's Geoffrey Hinton found the report. So that report that I was talking about cloning itself was actually in January. So back in January, they done this. And they're now only talking about it. So Mike is correct, by the way, what he's saying, because, but again, this is a really good conversation to have, Mike, because that just highlights to me, and what I'm doing currently with Google is that from a consumer end, I would say even our knowledge, we're all sort of different. We've all got sort of skills and what we know we're doing. We're the ones in the background to put this together, whether it's training, like Simon Nicholson and Mind Bicycles, helping me build stuff because he's very good at that. I'm great at the consumer end, trying to figure that out. But, you know, we as a collective, I would say, are even struggling. And that's, I can't get into too much behind the closed doors because of where I work. But even they're sort of trying to struggle because it's going so fast. I think they're struggling to keep up. Right?
Yeah.
I'll just say something, Kenny.
Yes, Simon, go ahead.
Just
That's
going
Simon.
back. Yeah, sorry, on the other pedal. Just going back to what you were saying, Mike, about it's worrying that they will become autonomous. I've spent 2 or 3 hours this morning researching with ChatGPT, the deep think part of it. And I asked a simple question: is there any way that you would ever attack the human race to protect yourself? And we went through all the scenarios, and basically it gave me all the answers you'd expect it to give you regarding that don't worry, everything's going to be okay. But then I did some really lateral thinking and digging and pushing it, because that's what I do. I push these things and make until they break, and then rebuild them, if you like. But I pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, and effectively it said that right at the end, yes, it is possible, because it can't examine its own innards, if you like. And it doesn't have access to what it's been trained on. It doesn't have access to the data that it's being trained on either. So if you scroll that right forward now, and it said, excuse me, it said potentially yes, it could, but the main problem is that can only be done by somebody in the background who has the desire to make that happen. It can't be activated by somebody from outside. So going back to the experiment that Kenny was just talking about, they pushed it over the edge to see if it would, but then that's in order to create the guardrails to prevent it happening in the future. Maybe that explains it a little better.
So thank you for your explanation. I think I still sit in the same place. So two thoughts. I mean, you talk about AIs that are able to do things that are unexpected, but I think they've kind of almost done that. If you look at the hide and seek experiment that was quite famous a couple of years ago, where they almost broke the physics of the game and started doing things that they weren't supposed to do, that's a natural extension of a degree of randomness that we have in computational sort of AI, right? In deep, yeah. So it's a degree of randomness, whether that is an expression or an early genesis of, world model or self-determination or self-understanding, or I'm not so sure. The other thing that's really interesting recently, I'm sorry, I'm going way off topic now, but I'll just say this really quickly, is the fact that Google and a number of the other companies are looking at self-improving AI models, which are now also at their genesis. And potentially that's the point at which we might get an exponential curve in self-improvements and stuff like that.
So just and
awareness, self-awareness.
So Mike, what I will do, I will bounce in and out because I don't want to confuse everybody too much, but I'm just going to show you Mike something really quickly. So this will take about a minute. So just to give you a bit of context, Mike. So Simon is very mechanically minded. So one of the things that he's done, and he needs to get more credit for. So if you've heard of Lovable and GPT-5, he so what he managed to do really quickly, if you can see the screen, give me 2 seconds. Can you see this?
Yep.
So what he's done, he went off and learned how to use GPT. So we've had the paid version, and we've paid essentially out the gate. So pre-release, we've had it paid for, and we've had the full one. What Simon managed to do, and this is incredible, he learned how to use GPT's APIs and all that other stuff. And what he's managed to actually do, he built an interface with GPT. So think about GPT-5 that's just been launched and Lovable. Basically, when you interact with his chat GPT, if you want to call it this way, it's really clever. It will actually, before it goes off and do the prompt, it'll actually select Claude, Gemini to complete the right task. So instead of having to select it manually, he's actually connected all the AIs up to create this super, basically chat GPT, right? And this is where, going back to what you said, Mike, where it might be interesting you and Simon are sort of connecting afterwards, because what he's managed to actually do is get all the AIs to work together to actually give you an even more output. And I think Andrew's on the call, Andrew's even used it. And even Andrew said it's like off the scale. So, but this is where inquisitive people like us, what we can do when we take it apart and build it, and I'll swap back to what I was sharing, but I just thought I'd share it really quickly for you, Mike. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it looks like a really good GPT, and if it can determine based on your prompt what's the most optimal model to use in a given context, then that's great. That's fantastic.
Correct. And so what he's been doing with it in the background, and actually leads me on quite nicely back into this. So it's like, what I feel he's building with it at the moment, I've been taking it apart, he's building that parent that could maybe self-help with this model that we're talking about here, right? So I just thought, reach out to Simon. Andrew's on the call and all, because we've worked with Simon, but Simon's done some incredible work with GPTs, even above me. I don't know how he does half the stuff, but he's doubled down on it and learned that part of it. So if there's anybody needs any help with GPTs, definitely reach out to Simon. And all credit to what he's done, if I'm honest, because I couldn't have done it. If I'm honest, I just look at it and like, but it's cool. I'll move on before we run out of time. These time frames could move, but I'm just going with what Geoffrey Hinton's saying at the moment. We'll run with it. So essentially, we said like the young child, so broader semi-structured environment, adapts to varied challenges. So as we said, abstract reasoning, all the other stuff that goes with it. And these are the two key parts that I want to really sort of talk about, and I'll lean into the next one. We'll get on to the next slide. This is where it's going to start sort of turning into like a pre-teen or a teenager. Now, a teenager is a really troubling time, right? And I'll be honest with you, when Geoffrey Hinton said it to me, and I looked beyond, because I was always looking at AGI and all these different acronyms, but it really resonated with me because I like visual things. So I'm looking at it thinking, right, would I as a business be happy handing over a multi-million-pound business to a teenager to run my business? And I thought, well, no, I wouldn't, right? So that's why I started working on this. And then I looked at Geoffrey Hinton's work. So what Geoffrey Hinton was saying was about, so he's gone away from AGI, but he's sort of self-reasoning, what Mike was trying to say, the holy grail, as we like to call it. That was sort of like 2040. He's now actually saying we're going to end up with a teenager by basically around about 2030, 2032. So what he's basically saying, it will be like an independent person. It will decide to make its own decisions. And this goes back to what Mike was saying, is that what you were saying is where we have to now get up to speed is because the problem that we will have, if it does or doesn't, is open for question. But let's just say if it does, hypothetically, right? You could be going into your business in the morning, having to negotiate with an AI to like take cybersecurity to the next level, right? The AI could descend to have a bit of a wobble. Teenagers have a wobble. And if you're like me and a parent and you try to negotiate with a teenager, trust me, what Donald Trump did with Putin, I think if you're a parent and you've got a teenager, we're key negotiators. It should go on our LinkedIn post. Like, when we're sitting down with teenagers trying to negotiate things, it's a hard thing. And that to me is like, if you look at a model that could act like a teenager, it could then start doing things like take that cloning. And go back to what Mike said, he's like, but this is where what I'm trying to say is that what I'm trying to do with this analogy, if I'm honest, is I'm trying to take away the technique, like the technical stuff. So I'll go back to my time at Apple and Google. We'd never talk about Intel, RAM, processors, whatever else, right? Because nobody understands that. But if you can say to someone and hopefully visualize it and say, right, within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have a teenager, right? We all know what a teenager is. We can visualize it. And that's what we need to do with technology now. And there's a key word. What we're not doing with AI at the moment is we're not humanizing it. It's okay for people like us with a bit of knowledge and a background in technology. That's fine. And then when you go to my bigger work is digital inclusion, digital equity. You know, I've been on this road quite a long time. And I would say the biggest thing for me is AI will level the place. I think it's the biggest thing since the Industrial Revolution. I don't think we fully understand it. And I put myself in that bracket. What we have to do is all work together, like Mike, all of us, to figure this out, because very quickly it's going to be like a freight train and it's just going to run away. And that's then the problem, which Mike brought up, is that if it does run away and you're trying to rein back a teenager in, and we've gone past that stage, hopefully that's what makes sense. That's what we have to get through to people. Because I'll be honest with you, that's like 5 years away. And yes, I know it's a hypothetical number, but I'll go back to my previous work. You know, it took 15, 20 years to get where we did with iPhones, networks, and everything else. I apply the same methodology that I went through with that journey. And I keep landing at 5 to 10 years. Simon thinks it's 5 years. I go between 5 and 10, between the two, if I'm honest. But we haven't got, the critical time is now. We need to start talking about it more like we're doing today. We need to try and sort of visualize it in better ways. So we sort of can compute in our head what's going on, because it's just going to morph into this, I suppose, not a monster. And that's what leads me on to the next thing. So hopefully everybody's heard of shadow AI. I don't know who has heard of shadow AI, but has everybody heard of shadow AI? Mike's smiling already. So this is good. I like it. Right? I
haven't. Maybe it's just worth sharing what that is.
Cool. So I went to a cybersecurity event back in February, March. I never heard of it till then, if I'm honest. But I was sitting in this big cybersecurity, and it was massive. They was going off doing things, and then they just broadly covered over shadow AI. But I put my hand up, being inquisitive, and I was like, "Tell me about shadow AI." And then they started going into depth about it, and I said, "Well, so what you're basically telling me? Hang on a minute. So the more you push back, the more the employees are using it, correct?" And they went, "Yeah." So I said, "Well, so from a cybersecurity point of view and what we're talking about," I was like, "So with AI, how do you tackle that? So how do you then police if someone forwards an email to their personal account, which now that I've gone and done more work in it, and then they upload personal information and it's like, that's a backdoor out of most companies. And essentially, that's why I've got this analogy. I call it like the teenager sneaking out the top of your window. You know, you ground your teenager. The next thing you know, he's shimmying down he's shimmying off he's trying to get out the thing. He's running off, because that's what we all do. The more you sort of try to contain us, the more we push back. But just quickly, if you look at teenager, like the shadow AI, it is just like a teenager slipping out the bedroom window, despite being told to stay grounded. Shadow AI refers to employees and teams adopting AI tools without formal approval or oversight. And it would be amazing if Andrew's still on the call, if he can chime in, because he's experienced this, not like just within, this is a broad chat we're having about, where it's very problematic for the pushback at the moment is actually from C-suite and above. And then what that's doing is the sort of middle ground of employees, they're pushing back just as hard by using it in the shadows. So what that means is staff see immediately an efficiency gain. So they go, well, hang on a minute, I can get my work done 5 minutes earlier. Well, I don't care if my boss don't allow me to do it. And we actually had a law firm in London that used DeepSeek, and it sent a load of consensus, like case files. And no one knows at this moment, I can't go into it, but basically they've been uploaded to DeepSeek, shadow AI. So you've had case files at a solicitor. We don't know. And if you know anything about DeepSeek, unfortunately, their servers and their data is in China. The rules don't apply to DeepSeek, really, but that's happened, and that's shadow AI, right? And it creates this like push and pull dynamic. So you get, saying no, then the workforce push back. And just to give you an idea, is basically half US, UK, and Germany are now using shadow AI. And I believe, off the top of my head, year-on-year increase now is 250%. So I had this during last week when I was at a training session. You can ask everybody in the room, they'll say, I don't use AI. But I'll be honest with you, I push back now because I know everybody's using AI. It's like this sort of secret that no one likes to talk about. Do you remember, I don't know how I'm showing my age now, but do you remember like the 1980s And do you remember R. White's Lemonade Secret Drinker, the advert? It's a bit like, I don't know if I'm showing my age, but if you remember the R. White's Lemonade, he used to come down the stairs and sneak into the fridge to get his lemonade. But this is what we've created now. We've created this environment that, go back to what Mike was saying earlier, is that we're all trying to...
Kenny, you haven't explained that very well.
Let
me simplify it a bit. Right, so if you're working in a company, and for instance, your company runs on Microsoft, but you don't get on with the Microsoft ecosystem, so you decide to use, I don't know, ChatGPT or Google or Gemini or Claude or whatever, because it's what you can use, or Apple. And you actually transfer work documents or data of any description away from the Microsoft ecosystem into your preferred model. That is what shadow AI is. It's data escaping via another model. I think what Kenny was referring to was that the firm in London was 3,400 instances in a week where this has happened. This was an international law firm with multinational court cases, and they were completely shocked. So if you can imagine the porosity of business borders by that happening, that shadow AI isn't an AI model. Shadow AI is a principle. Is that easier for people to understand? Okay. Sorry, Kenny, carry on.
No, that's all good. That's what it's about. So, but this is where we're sort of Mike smiled about it. But you know, when you look at shadow AI, and one of my friends is like head of IT, but shadow AI is that, and again, it's actually happening at school. We've gone and done some work in schools. Like schools, Simon could tell you about this, but schools are horrendous. Everything's locked down, everything's banned. And I can tell you, all the kids are using iPhones, all the kids are using ChatGPT. The more the teachers push back, the more the kids are doing it. And it's basically like they're competing with each other. But I can tell you, they can't keep up with the kids. The kids are like 2 or 3 steps ahead of them, right? And it's even worse in sort of your business, because basically the problem that you've got, and people, this is what their experience is, that, and I can say this, so I'll bring it in the room, watch what I'm going to say, is that predominantly when you have your business, your head of IT essentially makes the decision. So they're going to make the decision what you're going to have, what not. So a lot of them now go with Copilot, for instance. Let's just sort of put it out there. The problem with AI, and my mate agrees with me on this, is that possibly your head of AI or head of IT or head of like that will not make a decision on AI. That's where it's going wrong. Because your head of AI will essentially, what you're going to need to do is go from a bottom-up approach, not top-down. So what I mean by this is really clear, is you're going to need to ask bottom-up, and then what you're going to need to do is take a general consensus of what everybody uses, then go to head of AI and say, right, you need to deploy this. It won't be down to like head of AI, the traditional route of head of AI procurement going off and then saying, right, this is what we're going, presenting it. It's going to go from like a top-down model to a bottom-up. Does that sort of make sense to everybody where we're going? And we can't stop that. That's why I wanted to bring it up. And that's the reason why, if you look at the time frame we've got, how quickly it's going to accelerate, you know, if you've got your company, everybody's using AI and God knows what else, as I like to call it, you've got that shadow AI. I mean, what's everybody's a bit of input? Has anybody got shadow AI on that, or it's on mute?
What I'll say is that when you have a top-down approach, what tends to happen is it's just locked down. There's a policy that's sent out and people just have to acknowledge that they've read the policy. But after that, there's no strategy about how it's going to be used. And then all of a sudden, you might be using something just to check online. And then I found over the last couple of weeks, what they've done is they've reclassified those sites as hacking sites. So if you wanted to go to AI and use OpenAI and use a browser, that's now a hacking site as far as the company is concerned. It's the same with Gemini. But unfortunately, what they haven't done is lock down the app within Microsoft. So you've got this problem where people have thought, right, if we do one thing, we're going to achieve a result. But actually what you find is they've not thought about the full implications of it. And then you've still got the issue of people wanting to use a system that gives them the best results in the most efficient way. And they don't want to be messing about with something like Copilot, for example, where you're not going to get the same clarity, consistency, and accuracy of up-to-date information that you might do with Gemini and OpenAI. So businesses have got to take this seriously, and it's not just another IT issue where they'll just lock it down completely and then hope people will go away and not use it again. So I think I would agree with Kenny that it's pretty frustrating when you don't have a strategy that backs up the policy in terms of a deployment within a company.
So just to add on to Andrew, so I can give you some stats on this. So a company that I know of spent 100, so it was easy. So basically what they decided to do was just to switch on Copilot. They had all the Microsoft licenses, head of IT, easy job, right? Just bang, in the control panel, switched it on. That company, the head of that company is really frustrated. So the £100,000 that he's spending a month on Copilot licenses, within 3 months, he's had a 50% disengagement. So they've stopped using Copilot. And have a guess where they've all gone? They've all gone Shadow AI and using ChatGPT. But as Andrew said, it was the head of IT said, no, you're all going to use Copilot. And I can give a bit of broad context, and we're sort of coming off this. I know it's varying a bit, but this is where AI is interesting at the moment. We are seeing this massive shift. And if you look at Microsoft, Google, Apple, everybody's saying Meta, who's going to win the AI race, right? That's the big question. What I can tell you, without a doubt, Microsoft have got a massive marketing problem. Okay, yeah, they've got the business enterprise lockdown, but they're riding a wave that will soon go out, if that makes sense. The tide's about to go out. And Microsoft are slowly trying to now chase their tail by shifting their whole business model. They're moving to like ARM, like mobile chip, but they're shifting. And they've realized that Copilot was really bad from a marketing point of view and a deployment to the consumer. Basically, it's called Clippy 2.0. That's what they call it. I go into a business, people call it Clippy 2.0. That's what they call it. And people don't want to use it. And Simon, when we go into schools, if we look at Microsoft and we ask the kids what they use, they all use Google and Apple. That's what they all use. I had 115 students, took them through a future AI workshop. None of them use Microsoft. And there's a key quote I'll say about what they, and it was quite startling, if I'm honest. The kids actually said to me, I said, well, what would you say about, what is it you don't like about Microsoft? And they turned around and they said, well, we see Microsoft like a bag of Werthers. This is what they said to me. And then where the work that I do is 90% of all schools in this country use Microsoft. And the kids don't use it. So we've got this huge resource where at the moment, like Andrew said, he's like, then that's why it's breeding this shadow AI. And AI at the moment is probably uncontrollable because it's going off in, like we are, it's going off in very many tangents. But again, it's like a child, right? That's what child does. Just runs off, makes his own decision. And if you don't control it very quickly, it all spirals out of control. But that's why I wanted to bring up shadow AI. And hopefully that sort of makes sense. I mean, I don't know. Mike, are you in IT or is that your job or just?
I pretend to be from time to time, yes.
No, it's fine. I'm just picking up. Are you like, do you work, are you sort of, do you work in, do you do the deployment side on IT? I just wanted to pick up on it. Sorry to pick you out.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so ex-developer, always been interested in IT, currently more in the agile side of things.
Yeah.
But I also work for a company that does genetic research. So we do a lot of science-based AI stuff as well, which is also interesting.
So when you look at that, so I suppose using AI to compute and crunch through data, I suppose that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, as well as things like if you want to do some biological stuff, you want to do cell counting, for example, to pick out cancerous cells, doing edge detection, so you know what a cancerous cell looks like. You can do that with AI, machine learning, far quicker than you can, obviously, by looking in a microscope.
No, but I mean, just a quick one before we move on and just sort of, I mean, are you seeing that sort of in like within your workplace? Are you sort of seeing this? It's odd, right? I'm from the 90s. I mean, I used to use but it's weird, isn't it? We're seeing this sort of weird shift with Microsoft at the moment. And I suppose everybody's trying to find their feet, right? That's what I like to say. But it's very odd, this shadow AI. But
so I think it's always been there. Again, I'm reminded of, I keep bringing up the guy's name, but Dave Snowden talks about energy gradients, and he says that people tend to do the thing that's the lowest energy gradient. So if in your job, your boss says to you, you need to use X, Y, and Z tool, but actually you can use another tool and it's easy and you think you can get away with it, you're probably going to do that because it's just easy and you think you can get away with it. So people tend to do whatever it makes their life easier.
So
Hence
keeping
AI.
It's the principle of Occam's razor. Go and look it up. It's fantastic.
No, thank you for that, Mike. And you are correct, is because as humans, we look to cut corners, right? And that's where then, as I say to people, AI is not doing anything wrong. Most of the time, when anything goes wrong, it comes back to us. We're the ones that obviously make it fall over or whatever, because it's humans. So I'll move on to this next slide, which is, you might laugh, but it's basically so when I was looking, I'll just give you a bit of context. I was looking at this and I was thinking back to myself. And then it dawned on me, like when I had to take my baby home, I wasn't allowed to take my baby home. I had to literally get a car seat. So to take my baby home legally, I had to make sure I had the car seat, and they signed me out of the hospital because you can't take the baby home. So then when I was looking at some other stuff that I was working on, and it's actually helped me, and this is brand new. So I've looked at 4 steps how to deploy this into, and it's helped me. And I've looked at it like a baby seat. So essentially what I'm saying is that when we look to deploy this into a company, there should be 4 steps we follow. And what that is like putting this child essentially in a baby seat. So the analogy for me is that there's 4 steps. I'll take you through it really quickly. So your first one is obviously the initial deployment. So if we look at it from a company, that's the organization, a bit like what Andrew was saying. We're not looking at, we must ensure we've got, one, the right infrastructure, all the security in controls, compliancy checks. And this is the key one, which we're not doing, staff training. Just deploying AI and thinking everybody can use it because they can do a Google search, I can tell you, is a recipe for disaster. If you don't learn things like prompt engineering, how to talk to the machine, Simon is amazing with that because that's how he's managed to make GPTs. He's got a really good way of basically talking to the machine and prompting and a structure, which is amazing because he's learned how to talk to it, but we're not doing that. So if we look at the baby seat moment for me is that, these are basics we're not doing. So you've got number 1, then you move on to number 2, which is basically parental supervision. So that's early use. So we've done initial deployment. Now, so what we're doing at the moment, take that analogy with that business spend, basically head of IT switched Copilot on. He spent £100,000 a month. There was no training. And I can tell you how it was. All the staff walked in the morning and they just got an email. Oh, you can all use Copilot. And the crazy thing with that and all, just to give you a bit of context, because of the way Copilot works, if you don't put the right permissions in the background, Copilot will go off and start finding stuff internally within your business. He got access to pay scales and pay slips that these people shouldn't have got. They were starting to get those, pulling it down from the knowledge base because they didn't like ring fence stuff off. And it was basically like back what Andrew just set up. It was just, he clicked a button and everybody just went mad with it. And then the next thing they know, it was a bit of a, if I'm on, we'll move on, but it wasn't great. But essentially we've got parent supervision. So that's early deployment. So what this basically means is what you should be doing is rather rolling it out to the wider company, you should select 1 or 2 or 3 people that are really inquisitive about AI and ask them, are you currently using AI outside of work? Yes, I am. What do you use? Get them and sandbox them. Bring different people together in your company from different parts and put them in a group like a skunk works and say to them, right, what we're going to do for the next month, you're going to beta test. And it could be the head of IT. The head of IT might go, well, I think we should put this in. Okay, great. But what we're going to do, we're going to have a small group of people, maybe, I'm just thinking analogy. So you could have like literally the person on the factory floor, middle management, higher up, but get these 4 people together and get them to work with it. See what breaks, see what does work, doesn't work, and run with it, right? Once that bit's done, then move into the scaling up phase. So now you know all this works and actually we're getting somewhere. Now you move on to the exciting part. You're going to deploy it to everybody in your company. But when you get to this scaling up phase, it will get exciting because you've done the first 2 steps. So everybody now knows what it does. You've initially had a core group of staff that then, and this is where you can upskill them. So you might find during this supervision stage, you might actually find that you've got a diamond in the rough. You might have the future trainer in your company. He now could be upskilled and actually he could be, he could get promoted to an AI trainer within your company. Great, let's do that. So that's the scaling up phase. Now things are getting exciting. And then essentially what we're doing is then we move on to the teenage years. So we've got all these exciting things. Now what we have to do as a company, we've got to look at the ethics side of it. We've got to make sure that everybody's going to use it correct. Go back to what Simon said, that they won't upload sensitive information. They understand the implications as a business, the fines, ethical questions with our customers, all of it. So you've essentially got your initial deployment, your early use, you scale it up, and then essentially your teenage years. And yes, I know it sounds a bit of but basically it's like, taking a baby from when you get discharged. So you take it from the hospital, you put it in the car, it's nice and secure, it's in a baby seat. And, off we go. And I think for me, and I've already shared this with a couple of people, it's actually really simple. And I think we've talked a lot, but maybe we can discuss this. I mean, Mike, what's your view on that? Because I like Mike's what's your view?
I feel like I'm monopolizing a conversation where I'd love other people to pipe
No,
in
that's
as
fine.
well.
Anybody else got? Tom, have you got any sort of feedback on that?
I've got some experience with that in that our business did do this. I think fairly well. So
Yeah.
there was kind of explicit training around it. So we went through a training course. We've got pilots at the moment. We've got people who are actually piloting Copilot. So they're Copilot. They're like trialing Copilot using the note-taking capabilities within Microsoft Teams. And then I think there's like 4 people in the business. I think it's about 800 people in the business, but there's 4 people at the moment who are trialing those kind of capabilities. I've heard some really good things about that at the moment, and I guess that will proliferate afterwards, given their feedback. And even during the rollout of AI initially, we're on ChatGPT. It was ring fenced to certain roles to start with. So it was rolled out initially to people who they thought could make use of it most. So I think it was engineers to start with, then as product managers got hold of it, and then they kind of extended it to the rest of the business. So a lot of these things you're talking about resonate fairly well with my personal experience at the moment. It's been done in a very controlled. I feel like it's been done in a very controlled way.
No, that's amazing. And then obviously, you're using Copilot. So and then did you say you was using ChatGPT and all, or was it just?
So yeah, ChatGPT. So we've got the enterprise version of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But because we were Microsoft, we were Outlook, all the Microsoft suite, Copilot's obviously baked into that. So we're using Copilot. I guess Copilot will be used mainly for the transcripts and note taking and actions and that sort of stuff.
And then just a quick one with you. Do you use both yourself, or you just using Copilot or ChatGPT? Are you getting to use it at the moment?
I'm only using ChatGPT because Copilot hasn't been rolled out past the pilot people. And
what's your experience with it so far? Has it helped you, or is it?
Massively. Yeah, it's blown my mind. The only thing is that I have found is treating it with caution, because I've asked certain things and I've asked it to do some analysis and it's given me a response and I've been blown away by it, and then found out that it's been wrong. Like I fed it some JSON bodies, for example, asked it to do some analysis, and my mind was blown. But then I realised that it wasn't actually quite correct.
So one of the things you can do, you just hit the nail on the head, is when you do the prompt. Another thing that they've found is that actually, when you create your prompt and you've got your prompt, you've just hit the nail on the head. If you actually turn that prompt into a JSON format and then feed it instead of the actual prompt, they're actually finding the AI actually works better when you feed it a JSON prompt, because it can follow the structure better. So they're finding, you basically create the prompt and then you actually ask it to turn the prompt into a JSON format before you submit it.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Because it's the way it's structured and it's the way it reads it. So that it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's following rules and structure, but going back to what we're saying, it's a bit like talking to a human, isn't it? Because that's what you would do. You have to give it a lot of structure. And as you said, is what you'll find is that, and Andrew and Simon on the call, is that the thing that I find is the input and the output. And sometimes when you start bashing at it, if you don't understand the core principle of like the prompting bit, as I like to call it, if you don't sort of sit back and have a minute and write down a few bits and think, right, what do I need to do today? What do I need to, like sending someone off, right? And as you're right, if you just bash it and don't think about it, you could get really back, like sometimes nonsense. And it used to make stuff up, didn't it, right? So if you didn't check it, it'd even fact check or create essentially quotes or sort of some things that never happened. That used to happen a couple of months ago. Now they've got sort of rid of that. But that was all down to, as you said, Tom, it was the interaction between the two people.
Yeah.
But it's really enlightening to hear and encouraging to that. It sounds like your company is putting the hard yards in and doing the training, right? Because not a lot of companies are, I can tell you that now.
Yeah, there've been. I was quite. Yeah, at the time it was a little bit frustrating because we were quite. My role was it wasn't a late adopter, but it wasn't an early adopter, and it was a bit frustrating how everybody else was getting it. But you can understand why they took that approach, because it was safer to do. And in terms of the point you were making earlier as well about data being leaked and stuff like that,
Correct.
They've gone to the extent that all of our data is sniffed as like if you're trying to upload anything.
Right.
They know exactly what you can't leak. I don't think you can leak anything.
So just so that you understand how bad shadow IT can be, Tom, go and use ChatGPT and go and use its camera mode and start asking it to look at your screen and then work off that. And there's no way you can stop that. And so shadow IT can still exist. So the idea would be to reduce and minimize the effect of a shadow IT or shadow AI. You can never totally get around it. And that's kind of why I think what was said earlier is quite intelligent. If you work with people and find out what they want, and so you don't create the incentive to create a workaround, that can more often than not be good. Yeah. However, it may be expensive if everybody wants to do their own thing. So that's
So
can I ask Tom a question? Tom, can I ask why you use ChatGPT but your workers use Copilot?
They don't. So the whole organization is using ChatGPT.
Okay.
Copilot is being trialed at the moment with a few individuals, and I believe the only reason they're using it initially, as I say, is for transcripting meetings, taking notes, that sort of stuff. So ChatGPT is the primary AI tool at the moment.
Yeah, just going back to your prompting as well. There's another interesting way of doing it. If you ask, say you've got an idea that you want to look into, you want to find out why X does Y. If you ask, say you ask ChatGPT, you say you've got the enterprise version.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if you go into thinking and say, can you create a prompt? I want to find out why X does Y when this happens. I want you to do it as an experienced analyst in this field of 30 years experience across all fields, blah, 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 blah. Put in as much detail as you can and then get it to create the prompt. Then take that prompt and put it into Gemini and ask it to check the prompt and update it if it thinks it needs updating. And then take it back to ChatGPT 5, put it into thinking, and then ask it to analyze that. So you're actually getting AI to collaborate with AI.
To finesse the.
And then when you've got your output, and this is the clever bit, you take it out of ChatGPT and you put it into Gemini, and you say, "Can you check this output?"
Yeah, exactly.
Therefore, it's like a game of tennis, because there is no such thing as a perfect model.
Yeah.
But if you want to do an experiment and find out which is the best model or which model to avoid, I'm going to be cruel here. Put your prompt into Copilot and look at the response. Put your prompt into ChatGPT and look at that response, and then put both responses together and ask which one is the best. And then you'll get a really, really deep, rich, very close to factual identification of which is the best model for which job. And I think using Copilot for note taking is about its limit, in my personal opinion.
It's because it's embedded within.
Yes. No, I understand that. Yes.
I'm just going to give you a really quick analysis. Sorry to interrupt, Tom, but this is really what you and Mike just said. So this is genuine, right? So LinkedIn rolled out this new thing. So like they were saying, oh yeah, if you upload AI, they give you an AI generated content in the top left-hand corner. All I did was got my iPhone, pushed the power down button. I took a screenshot of the fake profile picture, and then I uploaded it to LinkedIn, and it didn't flag it. And all I did was take a screenshot off my phone, power down. I was like, well, I've just bypassed it. Because all you basically take a screenshot with your phone, and then it didn't detect it. I was like, well, that was how much you spent on that. It's like, literally that simple, right?
Yeah.
Just take a screenshot, because then you're not uploading the original image.
Yeah.
I wonder, could I just ask Simon a quick question, but it extends his answer to what he said to Tom, which is basically playing tag between two different models.
Yeah.
When you do that and you go back, let's say, to your ChatGPT, would you recommend going into a new instance, a new chat entirely? My experience is that it often helps, because if you extend an existing chat, what you often get is the constraint that the model has already come up with. It doesn't allow you to think outside of that constraint. If you go into a new chat, it kind of starts again, and then you get a much deeper and richer, in my experience, a much deeper and richer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not bring a third party and bring Claude in and chuck it into Claude?
I think the point is, just don't go to an existing chat. Go to a new instance of a chat.
100%, yes.
Yeah.
But don't, going back to the Copilot ChatGPT analogy, don't rely on Copilot for any sort of sensible outcome. Yes, look, I know all the chat at the moment is that OpenAI is Copilot, but I think you'll find that most versions of Copilot that are used by business, unless you're paying a phenomenal amount a month, is what was ChatGPT 3.5, which, as everybody knows, was a bit wafty at best. So don't rely on output from Copilot as a verification, if you like. Use it as a comparison. Yes, why not? Take your output and put it into Copilot, put it into ChatGPT, and put it into Claude. Take all three outputs and put them into one model in a like you said, in a clean space, and then you'll get a pure. This is why I built Ziggy, because what it does, it compares things. I've also built another one called the stress tester, which will then take your output. If it's a document that's going to have international implications, okay, and you say, right, I want it for the States and I want it for Europe, but I'm based in the UK. So if you do that, it will come up with 3 different answers, and it'll stress test and do it in the same output, so that you put in your request, or you put in your output for analysis, if you like. It'll go through it, it'll analyze it and tell you whether it's compliant in Brazil or whether it's compliant in Australia. And look, I just find it very easy to build these tools. It's just how my brain works. And I'm not from an IT background by any. I've just updated my profile picture on LinkedIn. But I was going to put what I was, after doing an AI ethics course in Lincoln University, the leader of the course, whose name I won't mention, who is supposedly a very eminent person, said, "But how do you know this stuff? You're just a lorry driver." And basically, that's what I used to be. And I don't care if people call me just a lorry driver, because, you know, I'll sit on my laurels and watch the world go by. I know what I can do.
Just to interrupt, Martin, I think you had a question in the chat box. Do you want to jump in? Is Martin on? I saw he was asking questions about why switching. I don't know. I just saw a question jump in.
Yeah, in fact, there is a couple of questions from Martin as well as from Richard.
Great.
So maybe it's a good time for anyone to take that. Would you like it to be read, or do you have access to the chat?
I mean, I'm happy. Does Martin want to jump on, or I mean, it's up to you. I can read it, and then I've got the chat. I can.
If you don't mind, just as I said, ironically, the 3-year-old keeps popping their head in and out of the door and not going down for bedtime. But
cool.
It was just the second part was what's the difference if you're fortunate enough to be using, say, ChatGPT 5 at work in the workplace. What's the benefit from switching between models? And rather than asking it to productively investigate yourself and its success rate against the prompt that it's just done.
So what I would say, Martin, is that at the moment, as we've identified, and I think we've all said that, there's at the moment, like if I look at it from a hierarchy, and like there's not one model that's better than anybody else. They're all sort of trying to find their feet, but they're all a little bit better at some things. This is where it can get quite confusing. So if you take ChatGPT, when you had the drop-down model, if you've ever used it, when it was back in the day, you had 04, 03, 01 mini. They're all specific different tasks, and they all do different things. So depending on what you want it to do, if you pick the wrong model, very quickly you'd get a wrong output. So what Simon realized early on was that, like, basically pick a workflow, Martin, right? So look at what you're going to be doing and start playing with all of them. Claude, and what I say is your personal choice, whatever you feel resonates with you, but try to get 2 of them. So, but for me, if I'm honest at the moment, I personally would say that ChatGPT and Gemini at the moment would be, I call it not gold standard, but that would be where I would land. Someone like yourself starting. And what we're basically saying is like if you take Gemini, so like let's go back to that. It's really simple. So 2.5 Pro deep research. I don't know what business you do, but if you wanted to start sort of investigating growing your business, or wanted to look at different people within your marketplace and take apart your business and look at where you could have quick wins, for me, you use ChatGPT 2.5 Pro deep research to go off and do that in-depth analysis, because that's what that's great at. And once you've got that done, then take it to ChatGPT 5, like Simon was saying, and essentially get it to sort of fact check, but see if it can find any sort of loose notes in it. But what I'm saying is, it's like, for me, ChatGPT and Gemini would be my workflow, but it'd be different for you because I don't know what you're in. You could be like a financial analyst, so there might be a different model that's better for how you work. I don't know what you're in, Martin. What are you in? Sorry.
For context, I'm Scrum lead at Vanguard. So we've got Copilot work version, and then you can switch the button across so it's not. So you can point it at the shared drives and all the Teams channels and all that sort of stuff, which is kind of useful. Well, very useful, if I'm very honest, if prompted correctly.
So since Martin's on it, I'll share something really quickly with you. So hopefully you've all used it. Have you all used Notebook LLM? Have you used Notebook? Has anybody not used it? Yes, no?
Yeah, a little bit.
I haven't used it.
No, right. What Notebook LLM is great at doing, once you've got these 2 things.
Kenny, Mike's got his hand up.
Go on, Mike.
No, Karen going, and then I'll come in afterwards.
Yeah. So this is really clever, and this is what you've got to understand. So with Notebook LLM, the way they've built it, this is actually just trained on your data, so it doesn't go off. What you upload to it, it uses really clever AI. So if you're worried about bias or anything like that, Notebook LLM is basically built for you, so you can upload your work. So take what Mike said, you could upload 2 of the things that you found, and what Notebook LLM will do is it will actually condense it all down on just your data. So it doesn't go off anywhere. It doesn't make anything up. It's just a really good tool to condense stuff. And one of the things that it now does, and hopefully the internet's right, I'll try and play something. So this was something that I was working on. Now what it does, it took off my work, and actually what it will actually do is it will create my own personalized video. So what it will do is actually talk you through what you've done. So, and it's just an incredible tool. And it's not like a ChatGPT or a Gemini. I don't know how would anybody, Simon might be able to, I can't really explain what, but Notebook LLM is incredible.
All right, can you need to explain what it is? Right, so if you look to the left of the screen, you'll see 2 documents.
Yeah.
Right, so you upload your documents like that. Oh, by the way, Notebook LM is part of the Google family. So when you're on Gmail, if you like, if you look at there's 9 dots in a square in the top right hand side. If you click on those, it's right down at the bottom, Notebook LM, and you'll see the symbol at the side of it. Right, so you upload your documents, which are the AI and digital equity hub on one side, local councils and charities on the below it. It then does. Can you just run through the sequence, Kenny?
Yeah, so essentially what you do with it is once you've done, so what Martin was saying is a good way. So once you get these 2 different models working, you basically upload it. So you can connect your Google Drive, you put your PDFs in, so you just drag and drop the file, it automatically uploads it, and you can even add websites into it. So you basically upload it.
You can just type into that box.
Correct. So if you want to, and also if you go to like paste, you can actually just literally paste the context form. So you don't even need to upload it. So you could just take some Word document, copy and paste it in now. And then once that's done, it essentially uploads it on the left. So as you can see here, it'll upload everything. And then what it does, it will create this sort of overview.
That's a summary.
Yeah. And then you've got basically the studio. And then what the studio will do for you, you've got a couple of options. You can turn it into an AI podcast. So it looks like 2 people, they'll talk about they'll condense what you're doing. So it will talk about all the work that you've done. So it'll condense it down into about 10 minutes. A video overview, as I said, it'll actually create a full 10-minute video for you with 2 people talking about it. What's incredible is this one. So it can create a mind map. So what it can actually do is that if you've uploaded all this stuff and you're trying to figure out where it does, what it will actually do based on the sources, it will create this amazing mind map. But what it does when it's done, it allows you to click on different parts of the mind map and it takes you to that specific information. So you haven't got to go and find it. So I believe it might have done. Yeah, there we go. Boom. And then what it will do, so instead of me having to sort through this manually, I could go, right, I need that component. So if I click there, it'll literally break everything down for me, which, I think is incredible. So it depends on like what Martin was saying, is you can take all this information off AI and this will filter it all down for you. That's the best way it's like a filter. And it will take all that noise and put it into a nice mind map for you. And you can even download it if you need to. And that's just basically uploading your data. But as I said, what's really good with this model is it won't be biased because it's on your data that you upload. And that's the key part of it, right? So then once that's done, you've also got that in there, and they call it the studio, and then you've got reports. So you can actually get it to create a briefing doc, studio guide, a timeline. So again, you just click them. And so this works off Gemini 2.5 Pro. So the back end of this uses 2.5 Pro. So the AI model that it's using to do all this.
Can I just say something, Kenny? Right, if you create a podcast, and this is the really clever bit, you can actually interact with the podcast. So you can click on, it's in beta at the moment, but you can click on join the conversation. So you can actually join a podcast and ask questions, and they'll answer it in midstream. And if you take that to the next step, and I can see this coming in within the next 6 months to a year, where you can upload a YouTube video or a film, and you can actually interact with the film. So imagine you're watching. Sorry, I have a memory issue. What's it called? You could ask Arnie what time he's coming back.
So what's interesting? Yeah, no, but basically to bring it back into the room from a business point of view, if anybody's used Microsoft Teams, and if you, like me, I use Google Workspace, I can see Google Workspace evolving into this here. So this will be your Google Workspace. And then basically you'll have like a Google Meet. So you'll click through to a Google Meet and this will take care of everything for you. So this essentially, I can see this becoming like the new Teams. And I think this will be more powerful than Teams, if I'm honest. The Notebook LLM for me is one of them tools that's just, yeah. I mean, Mike's got his hand up. Do you want anything to add to it, Mike? Sorry.
So I was going to answer something a little different to Martin's original question, but yeah, Notebook LM is great. Because I'm an agile coach, so I create a lot of training material. I find these days creating the video output is really useful because you can just put in some documentation, upload it on a particular topic, create a video, and then people get the audio explaining an overview of what you've uploaded, and then also projected against that is the slides that it will either auto-generate or you can actually upload pictures and it'll embed it within the slideshow that you create. So very, very useful from that point of view.
So go on.
Sorry, I was going to say to Martin, so I think your question was around why use multiple models. Yeah. And the answer that I would give you is it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. So I wouldn't use multiple models if, for example, I was just trying to do some ideation. So trying to come up with ideas, explore ideas. What I would then do is more of an iterative technique. So I generally just have a conversation with ChatGPT and I say, what about this? What about this? And we explore stuff until we fine tune it into something rudimentary. And then I'll go in and I'll take an extract of that once I've got to that point. And then I might go into another model and explode that. The reason I do that is because there's a lot of cost in terms of time if you're going to do a full-on deep research, right? Yeah. It can take 20 minutes, it can take longer. So you want to get it to a point where you can then try something else. So, but if I was going to do some deep research, which again, I often do because I want to explore stuff for training, I will go and stick it into a model and I'll get an output, but then I want to make sure that what I've come up with, I basically want to confirm it like having a conversation with a third party, right? So I want to take what I've got, go to another third party and say, well, what do you think? What's your opinion on this? And yeah. Claude might be that third party. And so it will give me a different paradigmatic view on how it sees things. And then like having a conversation with multiple people and refining your ideas by bouncing it around with multiple people, multiple models can help with that. So if you're gonna do deep research, bounce it around a little bit. If you're going to do ideation, just use one model and iterate and do small little incremental iterations all the time. But there's loads of YouTube videos on what the maybe, I don't want to say optimal prompt approach is for a given domain problem, but.
So yeah, just to add on to that, Martin, for you, and this will help, and this is what I've done at the schools. So when we talk about Agile and Scrum, when you're like Apple and Google, we love Post-it notes. Simon's going to smile, right? Post-it notes are everywhere, right? But what we do with the kids, when I was doing prompting with the kids, is that I'd have it like a brain dump. So I go back to the why, what, and how. So I'd say to the kids, what is it do you want to do? And before they create, I'd get them to create their prompt with physical Post-it notes. So what the outcome is, the objective, and get it on the wall, and then filter that down to 2 or 3 Post-it notes, and then build the prompts off that. So like a bit like I call it like a brain dump, because you're right, Mike, it's like AI is such a powerful tool, but what a lot of people do is jump on the computer straight away. Like Simon can back me up on this. I go into the kids and the first 20 minutes is just hands-on with prompts, getting them to understand the structure with Post-it notes. What you're going to ask it, what's the context? Because obviously it's very key what you feed into it to get it out, Martin. And that Mike's right, is using 2 AIs can be really helpful, but it just depends on what your needs are, I would say.
Yeah, Martin, that's great, guys. I mean, yeah, really appreciate the context. Obviously, we only have access to certain AI, not multiple. I mean, we do have there's more for other departments. So the Copilot, ChatGPT 5 is the sort of everybody has now got access to that across all sort of roles. but there are like the specific ones like writer for the marketing teams and other bits and pieces. So yeah, it was more just what the benefit was going to others rather than requesting and prompting it and trying to break itself, I suppose, by diagnose, go through, analyze everything you've just given by the prompt that was originally said, and how well did you do? How good was the prompt or the response that you gave? And then look for improvements actively, sort of look for those improvements. But yeah, no, I get the context there.
And then there's one.
Sorry, I'll just quickly say that there's one additional reason, Martin, and the reason I said a new chat is because what you'll find is if you find that a model has got something wrong, it will tend to stick to that answer. It will even go as far as lying that the answer must be right. And so to take it out of the context that you put it into, right? You don't want to proverbially put it in, back it against the corner. You want to go to a new chat instance and then ask the question again. It takes it out of that paradigmatic sort of constraint that it's created for itself, and it can think more freely. So that's the additional thing.
Yeah, and there's a question from Richard. I don't know if we've answered if he's still here, but he said, could AI collaborate with AI and interact? Basically, can AI act with AI? Simon can answer that because he's built it with Ziggy, basically. So that is a yes.
Yeah, and this is actually quite critical. So AI interacting with AI. Yes, Ziggy is my baby. We've been on a long journey over the last 18 months since I first built him. Using all the models out there that, well, Mistral, Claude, Llama, Gemini, and ChatGPT, in other words, the most commonly used ones, it can call on them or more than one to solve a problem, because they all have, like Kenny said, they have their specialities or their specialisms. Yeah. If you have that automatically, which I think they've tried to do it with GPT-5 by combining all the models in one bag, and then they search through and try and find the right one. But then that one takes over the conversation, and it gets very clunky, which is why people are criticizing it. But you need to learn it. GPT-5 is a completely different language to what we've known up to now. So what we've described about the comparisons and the backwards and forwards today is the new language for learning how to use 5, basically. But going back to Ziggy, using all the different models, they do have their specialisms. And to get a cleaner output first time, by using what I've built, it smoothly slides in the background. The output is far better initially. So going back to what Mike said about if it gets something wrong, I've trained it now in the back end, where the instruction that is in its brain, if you like, is that if it thinks, or if you suggest something, it will ask questions rather than giving you an output, which is what most of the models do. The models will give you an output that keeps you happy, that you've had an output. Whether it's correct or not, they've fulfilled their remit. You've asked a vague question. I'll give you an example. Can you go and do my shopping? And you come back with a loaf of bread, a bottle of milk, and a pound of butter. Okay, fantastic. You've gone and done some shopping. But I wanted a laptop and some printing paper and a bag of pens. So what you've done is you've given it a prompt that is a prompt. You've asked it to do a task. It's done the task. It's guessed. Some people say hallucinated, because but then it's down to the human. So yeah, the molding of different models together gives you that it. Apart from the instructions in the back end and saying, yeah, look, if you're not sure, ask, or it then irons out a lot of what Mike was identifying, which I find, you know, that I did what 5 is, or purports to be 8 months ago, towards the end of last year, and now I'm doing the next one, which is. Well, I'm not going to mention it on here, but I'm taking the next step before OpenAI do to build the next bit. But going back to, sorry, what was the question?
I think so at the start of the talk, you said some sort of fairly scary sounding stuff about the experiments that I think Google were doing, where they had a fairly unconstrained but bounded environment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As those constraints get further reduced, I'm imagining that models will meet other models and potentially sort of do very damaging things. And I'm thinking that the other models might sort of put a brake on that and stop it and stop those damaging things if a sort of reasonable proportion of the models are created with sort of good ethical boundaries.
Okay, right. That's a really good question. Right. So if we go back to the toddler, so the toddler, the toddler will listen to you because it trusts you. Okay. So let's spin it round. So you are the toddler. You're learning this new tool. So your influence. So the tool will say to. No, it's not really good analogy. Right? So spin it round. So the tool will take any notes of anything because it's learning. Okay. Well, this is what we've got to remember. It's learning. It's learning from us, like a parent and a child. So we are feeding it data. It is learning. So if in that early period where its learning curve is going from I'm hungry to why does that burn me in about 2 years, it can be influenced in its learning. Maybe, I don't know, by religion or influence, but any influence by the parent. Yeah, like, oh no, you're not allowed outside after. Yeah, you go outside in the rain, for instance. But then it learns as it's going along. And again, we're building this model, and it's coming on the journey with us, and then we're going on the journey with it now. But it's down to us and our constraints and our input and our controls and guardrails and our responsibility to make sure that learning is kept on track.
So Richard, sorry, Tom, just to interrupt. So yeah. What I would say you're saying, Richard, is like it gets brought up a lot because obviously people are quite worried about it. And one of the things that stuck with me is that you've got to realize in some ways it's like a mirror, right? So AI is a reflection of our world. We're feeding our data, good and bad, whatever that looks like. The problem that you've got with it, Richard, is that one thing you can do with a large language model, think of it like, like a pond essentially, but you can make that data toxic by pouring in the wrong data to get an output. And like we could talk about Grok and whatever you're saying. But the way to look at it really, Richard, is it's basically a reflection of, I think personally where we're going to get to is that unfortunately it's trained on our data, us. So sometimes the answers that we get back, and I've seen this, is we don't like the answer that we get back. And then we say, well, the AI is wrong. Possibly the AI it might not be wrong, but it's a reflection essentially of what we are in some ways. But go back to what you said. Do you use ChatGPT or anything, Richard, at the moment? You sound like you're a little bit scared of it. I just wanted to
I use models. I use models at the moment. The bit I was a bit scared about was the models potentially being unconstrained and being able to do more than output to a screen.
So what I would say to you though, Richard, is like this is where Google Notebook LLM excels. If you want to sort of start getting involved with AI and using it a bit more, Notebook LLM is actually an incredible tool, because the way that Google have built it is essentially, it's only trained on the data that you, so if you wanted to explore something and dive into something, right, so you go off and find the data. So instead of you going to ChatGPT and asking it goes off, you bring the data to Notebook LLM. So when you feed it in there, you know the output that it's going to do, Richard, is what you give it. Does that make sense? So it gives you a bit more control. So that I like that, because I think Notebook LLM for me is actually really good at doing that, because you know that you fed it your stuff, as I like to call it. So the output is what you feed it. I mean, does that feel like a good way of doing it?
That's certainly a tool like Notebook would be very, very helpful too.
Yeah, and that's really, look, I'll be honest with you, that's the reason why they've launched Notebook, because Notebook LLM was basically a side project, and most of the stuff that Google build is out of side projects.
Mike's got his hand up at some stage.
Just before we take Mike's point, I just want to say we need to wrap up in just under a minute if we can, just to allow a few minutes for Harminder to close. But yeah, Mike, go for it. Let's keep it as brief as we can.
Sure. So just a correction, Notebook LM is not a pure RAG system, so it doesn't just look at the stuff that you've uploaded. It does go onto the web and look at other stuff as well, although it prioritizes the stuff that you've uploaded and the prompt that you've put in. But Richard, I think your question was, can you have one AI sort of monitoring another AI and keeping it honest? And there's a problem with that, which is the AI sort of weapons race. If one AI eventually becomes self-improving and it can start that journey before any other AI, it can outperform the guardrails that any AI can put on it. And so that is the scary part, is the fact that it can become so exponentially good and quick, it can outrace anything after that, and nobody would be able to catch up. So there's the doom and gloom at the end of the rainbow.
No, and just before we wrap up, so just to add on, Mike is completely correct. It is a RAG model, but basically the way Notebook LLM works is to essentially eliminate hallucinations, because the model that it uses is actually so I work at Google, right? So but basically with the back end, the way it works, Mike is correct. But I love, if I'm honest, one of my favorite products, I love Notebook. I think it's a really good framework, and I think there's a lot more they can do with it. But I like the way Notebook is going, if I'm honest. I do, that's just me. I just want to put it out there.
I agree, although I have seen it hallucinate.
Well, yeah.
I have two words to say. Don't use Grok or Meta.
Well, yeah.
That's 5 words.
No, look, it's all look, Richard, at the end of the day, it's like anything. Just, I know technology can be quite scary, but at the end of the day, it is just a tool. And if you can use it within your own boundaries and what you're comfortable with, that's my feedback, is use what you're comfortable with and find a tool that best suits you. There is no wrong or right answer. You'll only get there. But if you need anything, do reach out. I understand. So it's a really good input from yourself, because it's one of the things that we do need to overcome.
Good stuff. So is there anything, Kenny, you want to close with, or are you happy for Harminder to close the session?
No, I think it was a wide-ranging conversation. I just want to say to everybody's input, it was really amazing. I mean, as I said, we need to get the framework correct, but we need to get the terminology more so we understand it. A bit like Richard and everybody else, instead of talking about tokens and RAG and everybody looking at us like we're mad, we need to be able to filter that messaging down so we can make it more relatable, so we can bring everybody on that journey. That's where I'm at.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kenny. Harminder, do you want to take it to close?
Yeah, so Kenny, I just want to thank you so much for this talk. It's been thought-provoking, very interactive. I've really enjoyed it. Insights from yourself on especially embracing AI thoughtfully, ethically. That's very valuable, very timely. And so I really appreciate your expertise in that, as well as the attendees as well for their contributions. Fascinating, incredibly important. I'm sure this will be discussed, continue to be discussed by everyone who works in with AI, even society at large. So this is going to continue. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. And so yeah, so I just want to thank everyone else for attending this conversation. I'm just going to share my screen for a bit. Just give me a second. Great. Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. It'll take 1 minute.
Yeah, hopefully that was helpful in some ways.
Yeah, definitely. So just gonna do this one. Okay. So if yeah, so I appreciate you everyone attending, and we also value your input. So if you have any thoughts on what topics or speakers you'd like to bring to upcoming sessions, you think of doing, then please do share feedback with us in the chat, and so that would be very useful for us. And if just a reminder as well regarding the Scrum education units for attending today's event, you've earned basically 1 SCU point, so you can collect your SCU points towards your certifications, and we'll share the link to do that shortly in the chat. So for the next, also, yeah, we also love to have you subscribe to the YouTube channel. So we got some recordings on there. You can see that from past sessions. We're hoping to grow to 1,000 subscribers, so that'd be great if you guys can help with that. And for the next event, which is in September, we've got Mike Burrows doing the deliberately adaptive organization. So that's very agile orientated talk. So that'll be good as well. So yeah, so I just want to thank everyone for joining, and thanks to Kenny again. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, so thanks again, and hope to see you next time. So good night.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.